You know I'm right. Episode 14 right here in the WG Sports Radio Network. And the NHL season is on hold, but that doesn't mean we can't talk some hockey. Nick Durst here, and today I'm joined by two very special guests. Guest, what's your names and where are you calling from?
Dan Matarrese calling from Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania.
Justin Matarrese, sitting here with my cousin, also in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania.
All right, so Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. What is the hockey team down there that the locals like? Is it the Flyers, is the Penguins, or does nobody really care about hockey?
The Hershey Bears, Nick.
Bears.
Capitals AHL affiliate is about 15 minutes away from where we are.
So I didn't think we'd be starting off with some AHL here, but Dan, what are your thoughts on the fact that AHL season canceled, and then now they're saying if there's no fans next year, the league might fold? What do you think the NHL could do as a minor league system without the AHL?
That's a great question. I think from an economic standpoint, the AHL, as I understand it, in most cities, they lose quite a bit of money, but their value is on providing prospects and development for the NHL teams. So I think there's still going to be something needs to be done to continue to provide the farm system, if you will, or developmental opportunities for young NHL players. I mean, it is few and far between where you have someone who's drafted, who's ready to play in the NHL in their first year. It's typically only really, really elite talents that stay there. So the need, whether it's the AHL in its current form or not, the need is absolutely going to continue to be there, in my opinion, for some developmental type league for NHL teams to have.
Certainly, and that's something that we have to keep an eye on moving forward with the current economic crisis, and baseball is going to have the same issue, just for this season at least, because they already said there's going to be no minor league teams, and that's something to keep an eye on. But jumping more into hockey here on the professional level at MSG, Justin, my listeners might not know this, but you are a legend in the New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia area because you yourself played in net at MSG. You were the goalie
twice
at MSG, the world's most famous arena. So why don't you walk my listeners through here your experience on the ice and the locker room? You learned everything that Richter taught you, and then Lundqvist learned from you. So why don't you let everybody know about that?
Oh, absolutely. Big rebounds. That's big rebounds. That's what Mikey Richter taught me in the 90s. But no, it was awesome. I had the privilege of playing at MSG twice. Once was as a member of the Brick Hockey Club. So I grew up with Nick in Staten Island, good old Staten Island, New York, on the South Shore of Staten Island. Played for the Sharks. This was even before the Staten Island Rangers were really a thing in the 90s. In the bubble. Gosh, does the bubble even still exist,
Clove Lake,
Nick?
Right? The Clove
Lake bubble.
The bubble is now an outdoor rink, which is only used in the winter because obviously it melts in the summer.
Wow.
Never played at the Staten Island Pavilion in the South Shore?
By the time I got out of hockey, I had a couple of practices there, but I never played for the Rangers. Actually, now that I think about it, in middle school, I played PSAL club hockey for Wagner High School.
Wow, so when you're at IS-75 middle school playing hockey for high school, that just shows everybody your skill level right there.
That just shows everybody how few people played hockey in Staten Island.
Oh, easy there. Shots fired. Dan was a veteran of the Abe Stark rink.
Wow.
In beautiful
Back
Coney
in Brooklyn,
Island.
Coney Island. Yeah, I know a lot of the Staten Island high schools, they actually play their home games in Brooklyn, which makes no sense, but that's just the way it goes here in Staten Island.
Excellence.
So, Dan, you've obviously seen Justin's goal mining skills, and I know he had like an epic performance at MSG. Why don't you let everybody know about that?
Yeah, Justin's the two-pad slide, the lateral two-pad slide was a specialty of his.
Same eyebrow door.
Especially at times when the two-pad slide wasn't needed, but performed with eloquence. And I think Justin, much like the King, Justin played with a lot of emotion, a lot of excitement. We see Hank getting angry when he lets up goals. I think maybe Hank might have learned a little bit of that from Justin. when Justin was in net at MSG in his young years. But man, the young man played with a lot of excitement, passion, and commitment to the two-pad slide.
And I know, a lot of street hockey going on out there in Mechanicsburg. Justin, when's the last time you got between the pipes?
Oh, probably a few weeks ago. Though we were outside shooting the puck around a couple of days ago. I actually just purchased a pair of roller skates during the pandemic on Facebook Marketplace here. So I plan to go outside actually this week and play with the boys, and maybe I'll strap on the pads again.
And Dan, when I grew up with Justin, this guy showed no mercy. So I'm assuming he does the same to your children. He does not let any easy goals in and gets in their face when he makes a big save.
Well, he tries not to let easy goals in, but frequently he does. At this point, it's tough to keep up the level of excellence he had when he was but a young man. But no, Justin is, Nick, you're right. Justin is all in the entire time. He's not going to be letting up any goals. But I have two ferocious boys. One's almost 11, the other one's 8, and they really enjoy scoring on their Uncle Justin at every opportunity.
I just believe in a physical approach.
You ever drop the gloves?
To recreational activities. So I know when I play basketball as well, sometimes I'm criticized for bringing that physical approach, that hockey mentality to the basketball court.
The 1970s hockey mentality.
It definitely works on the volleyball court, though.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, softball.
Moving on here, though. I mean, we just mentioned this guy 5 times. Henrik Lundqvist. I don't know what the Rangers think they're doing with this guy. They're totally John Van Briesberking him. Justin's so passionate about this, decides to come back on Twitter after about 3 years to tweet some NHL insiders. So, Justin, why don't you give some insight on your thoughts as to what's going on with Lundqvist before the season was put on hold here, and what the conspiracy theories are?
Nick, it's devastating. I mean, it's devastating. Love Henrik Lundqvist. Obviously, Ranger icon, like no other. His number will be raised to the rafters one day at MSG. And like everything the Rangers have done in the last few years, it seemed like there was a well thought out succession plan. And Hank would play this season. We'd give Igor some experience in the AHL. Then Igor would come up. We'd slowly start exposing Igor to the NHL. And then from there, in 2020, 2021, we transitioned to either a 50-50 or a 60-40 Igor Hank. And then eventually, who knows, maybe Hank, Dan and I talked about this, maybe Hank would have signed a contract in 21-22 just to back up if the Rangers were contending for a championship, or maybe at that point he would retire. But for, we give credit where credit is due. Georgiev came up and played really, really well for the Rangers. But it just seems like Quinn really struggled to, I would say, give Hank enough starts so that he could maintain his sharpness during this time. Because once Georgiev started playing well, then they started sitting Hank. And you don't just sit a 38-year-old goaltender and expect them to continue performing at the same level they're used to performing at. So over time, Hank became rustier and rustier. Georgiev was playing well. And then they decided to call up Igor. And once Igor was called up, it really became a Igor-Georgiev back and forth show, with Hank becoming the third goaltender. And, we can sit here and certainly debate, or, it's not that much of a debate. Georgiev certainly played better for most of the season. But, it's marginally better. And it's important to remember the legend that Hank is and what he means to the franchise. And ultimately, I think they just should have given Hank a little more grace, given his experience with the Rangers and what he means to this franchise, and the fact he decided to go through this rebuild with us, and he made very real sacrifices for us. So I know Dan has a lot to say as well on the topic.
Let's hear it, Dan.
Yeah, I echo a lot of what Justin said. I will, taking the emotion out of it, look, the a franchise has a responsibility to obviously to win. That's their goal. That's what they're here for. I think the Rangers have. I mean, let's be honest, guys. We have never experienced sustained periods of success like we experienced in this. I guess 2000, maybe 13, 2012 Ranger team up on through. I mean, we were a contender year in, year out. Great leadership all around. It was a great time to be a Ranger fan, and I do believe that the franchise in this period at least as well, management had made a lot of very, very good decisions. Of course, we could mix in there a couple that were question marks and didn't pan out. And I think they've, as Justin alluded to, they've been remarkably transparent throughout this process, from when the letter went out a few years back in February about what they intended to do. And as someone who watches every game and is, I would consider myself a pretty dedicated fan. I don't know if that's fair to say, but
understatement.
I have relatively. I'm so impressed with how they've handled themselves throughout this, the moves they've made and decisions they've made. The situation with Henrik Lundqvist seems to be different from that. It seems that as Justin alluded to, it was not necessarily logical. In a lot of ways, it was not part of the plan, so to speak. It seems like things got a little bit sideways. You mentioned conspiracy theories, Nick, earlier. The one thing I can tell you is I believe there might be something else or more going on behind the scenes than we know of. What I'm going to say next is purely from my observations as a fan. I don't believe that Henrik Lundqvist, he might not be the easiest guy to be on a team with when the team is not playing well and when he's not playing well. And I do believe, because he's so competitive and he was used to so much success, that during the last year or so, and especially during the beginning of this season, when Hank was struggling and the Rangers were left a lot to be desired with defensive zone structure and play, I don't think Hank was probably the easiest guy to be around in the locker room. And I think because of that, you did see this team play better. To me, it's pretty clear they played better in front of both Georgiev and Shesterkin at times. And that happens. You have a veteran guy who's not used to being, especially it's been a while since he's been on a team that is inept defensively or has a bunch of young guys who are struggling with the new system. And I do think this was not, Justin alluded to, statistically speaking. You're right. Georgiev's numbers were not much better than Hank's overall. But, Hank really did struggle to find his footing and maintain consistency at the beginning of the year. I mean, the first quarter of the season for sure. And he also, as you can tell from just the mental side of things, and he even alluded last offseason to how hard last year was for him, going through a rebuild and such, is that I think there might be a little bit more to this. I think, as a coach, Quinn has a responsibility to put the best team on the ice that he believes can win games. And I think part of the equation is probably that this team felt and does feel less pressure and less on edge at times when Hank's not on the ice. And that pains me to say, because I love the guy. Yeah. And I would argue he is the greatest Ranger of all time, from my perspective. And then beyond that, the Shesterkin piece, listen, I know this is just speculation, but I've heard that there was a chance if he didn't get called up when he did that he could have opted to go back to the KHL. And I don't know the specific rules of that. A lot of people smarter than me may be able to fill in the blanks on that. But I think the Rangers kind of had a forced hand to bring Shesterkin up. And I do believe that it was never the plan to have three goalies in the NHL at this point. I think it kind of happened as a combination of a lot of different things. And then, as Quinn has admitted to recently in some interviews, while they've been on break, he's admitted, I don't think I've handled the situation perfectly. I do some things differently. And I think that's where we're at. And I still am holding out hope that the Rangers move Georgiev in the offseason and that we get Shesterkin as the starter with Hank getting, 20 to 25 games next year and being part of the continued rebuild that is going through.
So the conspiracy theory is basically that Gorton, who I think has done a terrible job with this team, luckily he's not the man in charge anymore with JD back. I think he last year went to Henrik and said, hey, I want to trade you. And Henrik said,